Mark and Peter, there's still a ton of uncertainty with the economy and potential credit challenges ahead of us. Any new thoughts on priorities for financial institutions?
Brian, I would say a couple things. One, I think priority number one right now is to take care of their employees and take care of their customers. And as it relates to take care of their customers, that includes executing on the numerous programs in which financial institutions, banking specifically, are directly involved in distributing the government's assistance to the economy more broadly. We're now moving into the phase for the SBA PPP program, in addition to the increased volume, which I referenced before, quickly moving into the forgiveness phase of those loans. That'll be a critical test for the program itself and for the banking industry to be able to effectively execute on what will continue to be evolving standards coming from the government. And so executing in a way that continues to meet the expectations and requirements of the program itself, but also address their customers' needs will be a critical challenge. The Main Street lending facility is just being stood up, and to execute on that program as well will be important, and how they support their clients going forward. That provides longer term loans up to 4 years for small business and medium-sized businesses up to 15,000 employees that they'll be supporting as well. So executing on those programs in a way that meet the government standards and meet their customers' needs will be important to them. And then as we move deeper into what may prove to be a deep recession, it will be important for financial institutions to manage their own credit exposure and their capital and liquidity positions. And so we're seeing institutions take a forward-looking view of the risks that they're exposed to, needing to bring together both the understanding of the pandemic from a healthcare perspective, the economic crisis from a credit risk perspective of their book of business, and then also looking at the impact of the government actions which mitigate the prior to, the ability to forecast that and understand the risk management posture and support for their customers. The challenges in getting that right, I think, will be something that the banking industry will be focused on now for the next several months.
And Peter, maybe if I pick up from there, it's notable that sort of the challenges that you described and some of the things we referred to as the next and beyond in our prior discussion really do mirror the regulatory priorities that are emerging. We've seen a focus on risk management challenges that have emerged as the health and economic crisis persists, despite the policy response. And as you noted, some of the unintended consequences of the policy response. Understandably, there's a significant focus on how firms are managing the risk associated with impacted asset classes and sectors. As the economic crisis persists, there's a distinct focus on scenario analysis and how firms are using their stress testing capabilities to understand what is the new baseline, what are some of the downside risks associated with that baseline, and how they should think about managing their capital and liquidity. As we discussed before, and not surprisingly, there's also a significant focus on lessons learned from the crisis related to operational resilience. We've seen firms largely be very effective at shifting to a largely remote operating model, but there's certainly been some challenges, and both the firms and supervisors are very interested in understanding what are the key lessons to be taken from that. We've also seen, probably sooner than we expected, a significant focus on compliance and conduct matters related to access to government support, treatment of customers that have not received access, or just treatment of customers generally, for example, those that should and are receiving forbearance. And finally, we're seeing that focus start to shift to the discussion around the return to office. That is, supervisors are very interested in what are firms' plans, how are they beginning to contemplate under what conditions they would return to office and increase the physical presence of their workforce. But importantly also, both with the return to office and as they contemplate a potentially new working model, how do they establish appropriate controls and risk management capabilities consistent with that new operating model? There's a recognition that social distancing will persist even as we focus on this return to office, putting a real focus on this new operating model.
Mark, I agree 100% with your predictions on this now, next, and beyond. I'll highlight one of the items we talked about as a beyond, which has turned into a now, is the changing expectations of those that are participating in programs, including the government agencies, but also the lenders. In this case, it relates to SBA, PPP, that the standards will change over time and that institutions will need to adjust to those changing standards to continue to implement a program under an evolving light. And I would also reference back to the beyond, the nice job that Bridget did of summarizing all of the levels of oversight that are here. We can expect that there will be continued focus on the performance of all participants in their role in acting in the best public interest in delivering on their responsibilities as it relates to addressing COVID-19.